So we've been talking about reading chord charts from a player's perspective. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to look at how to write chord charts from an arranger's perspective, how to write a better chord chart. Now, if I have a soapbox topic, this is probably it. Because I feel like we waste so much time in our rehearsals simply because we're not writing our chord charts in a way that are readable. We're putting traps. I mean, I look at some of these chord charts that are road mappy and have all these, you know, it's kind of like, you know that chart's going to crash. There's no way the best musician on the planet could read that chart just because it's not written well. So I'm going to give you some ideas and some thoughts on how to write a better chord chart. The first simple rule is not so many road maps. Anytime that you have a, you know, get to this place and repeat back to here, but this time leave out measure 7, and when you get to measure 9, change this chord to that chord. That chart is destined to crash. You know, there's no way that the band is going to play that, and even if they do catch it, it's not going to be musical. They're not going to flow well with it. Now, I mean, I like to think of it this way. I write my charts like Fisher-Price simple, and I even say to the musicians, you know, if you make a mistake reading this chart, it's definitely going to be your fault, because everything you need is right there, left to right. Big bold letters, the traps. I've already like highlighted the traps that I know you're going to tend to make so that you can plan in advance to not make them. You know what I'm saying? So let's take a look. Look at the graphic, and I'll show you some of the stuff I'm talking about here. For instance, the first thing I do is I have all of the big sections of the piece marked really clearly. And what that does for me is, particularly if the worship leader's calling an audible from the stage and maybe he's off the chart and he's improvising, as soon as he starts the verse, my verses and my choruses always start on the top of a page. So there's really no question. It's not embedded in the page somewhere. It's always the top of a page. And every phrase of music for me starts on the left margin. So in other words, every line of my chart is a phrase of music. So you know instinctively where the phrase starts. It always starts right on the left margin, which implies that probably every tom fill is going to be right at the end of a line that's pulling you back into the next. And anytime there is an extra measure, sometimes I'll even write in extra measure. But if it's a 4-measure phrase, I've got 4 measures in that line. And if it's a 4-bar verse or a 4-bar chorus, I've got 4 bars on that page. So you know what I'm saying? It's very musical, it's very logical, it's very clear where the sections are, where the phrases are, and it's much easier to play. Space is another issue. If your chart is so crowded, you know, we tease about somebody throws a chart up for a session, it's like, aha, the black page. You know, if your chart is so cluttered that people can't pick out the information quickly and easily as they're reading through the chart, it's going to train wreck, it's going to crash. So learn to do your chart. It's not like you're going to save a tree by saving 1 page. In other words, if you know, if it's a 4-page chart and you've got like 1 line of music on the 4th page, you know, why not just write it out? I mean, one adage I say is, when in doubt, write it out. If you're thinking, well, you know, I could put a repeat sign and send them back to here, but if in order to make that repeat, you've got to write in a bunch of first time guitar layout, second time add bass, a bunch of little instructions like that that clutter up the page, forget about it. Just write it out. It's much easier. People are much less likely to make a mistake if they're just reading the thing left to right. It's the roadmap, it's the repeat schemes, it's the do it different the second time. That's where the charts always train wreck. The other thing I do, I always write in lyric cues. The first couple of words of each verse, the first couple of the words of the chorus. Any pickup notes for sure, because that's what's going to tell the musicians when they get on an audible, if the worship leader jumps to another section, they can always tell where they are by those lyric cues. I always put double bars at the end of a section so you can tell when you're at the end of a section. Another thing that always happens, I'm sure this has happened to you, you know, you get in a rehearsal and it's like, okay, let's take it from bar 42. Well, bar 42 for the strings, well, that's a different place. You know, bar 42, that's actually bar 78 for the strings. And the background vocal singers, well, we don't even have bar numbers on our chart. there's no way you can do that. And then you're running around to each section trying to figure out where you are, and all your volunteer musicians are saying, gee, I could be home putting my babies to bed. You need to have the bar numbers match on everybody's part. So when you say bar 42, bang, you're starting at bar 42, and it's the same for everybody. Mark in really clearly things like, if there's a place where the full band stops on a dime, mark that in really clearly. I have like a font size 48 band stop in my finale chart writing template. Things like play this section 4 times. Lots of times you see repeat this 4 times. Well, everybody asks the question, well, when you say repeat 4 times, do you mean play it once and repeat it 4? Now, if you say play it 4 times, there's no question. I'm going to play it 4 times, right? Another big thing to mark is if there's a retard, if there's a rallentando, you know, where you're going to slow the tempo down, be sure that's marked really clearly. If you want to stop the groove at one place, in other words, you've got to tell the drummer to stop the groove. That's another big sign to get in there. There's lots of other good ideas in the Language of Music workbook, but the main thing is make it clear, make it simple. It's like when you're talking in rehearsal, as soon as the music starts, you can't be talking. So the only way you can communicate to your musicians is through that chart, through that piece of music. So make your communication in your chart writing just as clear as you communicate when you're talking to your musicians. Cool? All right.